It's the Full Court Press with Eric Frandsen and Jason Walker.
Welcome back to the to the show that we're doing right now.
Following the local teams, breaking down the biggest games with in-depth analysis and team interview. Join the show by calling into 435-752-1069 or text 435-339-0321. It's the Full Court Press.
Pros, Anson, yes! Caught! Touchdown! Did he get it?
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome on into another edition of the Full Court Press. Eric Frandsen, Jason Walker on a Monday, and what do we call it? A mourning Monday? I don't know.
It wasn't the greatest weekend to be an Aggie, except for one particular. Sam Merrill had himself a pretty good weekend.
Yes, he did. But yeah, a lot to discuss today as you've had a little bit of time to sleep on it. Relook at the film if you're a masochist and try to figure out what happened to the Utah State Aggies. Where do they go from here? So this first hour, a lot of time diving into Saturday's game between New Mexico and the Utah State Aggies. And first half was okay. Second half started out great. But then it all collapsed. It was one of the worst 15 minutes of basketball that I've seen. And a really bad collapse by Utah State. So we'll look at that. Take your texts on the Young Power Sports text line to react and try to make sense of what took place in what was going to be a heavyweight showdown between the top teams in the Mountain West, and it turned to be a runaway for the New Mexico Lobos. 435-339-0321 for those who want to chime in on that. We give you the updated standings, other scores that happened over the weekend. What are the latest net rankings and other rankings that look like that are out there in the Mountain West? And again, try to make sense of what happened on Saturday night in the Spectrum. 435-339-0321. And we already had a bunch of texts coming through earlier in the day. And I don't know about that one. That was probably intended for another program, but
8577.
Yeah,
I think so.
So let's start off with 8968. It somewhat looks. Oh, sorry. I guess there's one that came in on Sunday. I guess it's safe to say the Aggies won't be rated this week, at least the way we'd hoped. Yeah, they're not in. They're rated. They're just not ranked.
Yeah, well, that's what he meant.
But I know that's probably what you meant. Yeah, no ranking for Utah State. Had they won, they likely would be in the top 25. But
yeah, probably would have been. They were just outside of it. Now, I didn't even check the AP polls. So,
I haven't even looked at it today.
They probably still received some votes. Some, but probably a lot like after that UNLV loss, or even, I guess, before that, after the UC San Diego one where they received some, but, it's just a lot less. Only the true believers keeping them in there 1 or 2 or 3. I can double check it a bit later, but yeah, not ranked. And it's probably going to stay that way the rest of the season. I think it's just going to be a little hard for them to build up the kind of momentum necessary to end up in the AP top 25. But in the end, it's, again, of all, I know like the reason we talk about the AP poll is because it's prestigious. Like it is.
You get extra attention if you're in that poll.
Yeah. Every media guide in the country lists how many times they've beaten an AP top 25 team. Sometimes they include the coaches poll, but nobody cares about the coaches poll. And people tend to prioritize, like if you're number one in the AP, people will call you the number one team. If you're number one in the net, nobody calls you the number one team unless you're also number one in the AP poll. If you're number one in Ken Palm or ESPN's metric.
Right.
There is a reason that prestige is there. But I would also keep in mind that among all of the rankings, while that is the most prestigious, it is also one that matters kind of the least for a lot of NCAA tournament credentials because they pay attention to basically every other metric aside from the AP poll.
So the Aggies are still getting votes in both the AP and the coaches, even though you're not really paying attention to the coaches.
I never look at the coaches because I don't care.
But New Mexico has moved ahead of the Aggies, as you might suspect. They've got 23 points. Utah State has 8 points. Clemson is the last team not voted into the top 25 poll, and they got 182 points. That gives you an idea of just the gap between being ranked and not being ranked. Ole Miss is at 184, and they are at number 25. So it's a bit of a gap, and it's somewhat similar for the coaches poll as well. So Aggies slipping, as you would have suspect after a loss at home, no less, by that margin, but not falling totally out, where there are still some people that are giving Utah State some credibility for the season, that the body of work that they have for the entire season.
Yeah, and losing to a good opponent, and as you mentioned, it's a body of work thing. One game doesn't make your season. No singular win has defined the Aggies, and this singular loss isn't going to define the Aggies. What could define, if you're suddenly worried about a late collapse, it would be defined by more than one loss. If they were to suddenly go on from here and lose to maybe one of Wyoming and Fresno and end up losing, once or twice to, Boise and Colorado State, lose again to New Mexico, maybe even lose to San Diego State at home. Like, that would be the time to get worried. But I think it's important to put this game in context and also keep in mind, for as positively as we think about last year's team, they got blown the heck out multiple times. They got blown out by double digits at home. So this is the kind of loss that you obviously never want to see, but it's one that you're pretty much always going to see every season, because every season you have a worst game of the year.
Yeah, it's give New Mexico some credit for what they did, some of their adjustments in the second half. But as you said, sometimes inevitably any team is just going to have a I don't know, whatever you want to call it. I call them a bonk game, where it's just a bad game where just nothing works right. The shots don't fall that normally fall. Uncharacteristic turnovers. Guys that normally are 91% free throw shooters suddenly can't make a free throw. I mean, sometimes those games just happen. It seems to, and there's a bit of a contagion when that happens sometimes, and that's something has spread in this team recently. Their confidence has been rattled a little bit, and they've got to find ways to get that back. And to that point, 8968 sent this in earlier today. Something looks like the team has lost their confidence. The one big fact is that they just don't have the same energy that they started the season with. Unless they can get some of that back, the team is in deep doo-doo the rest of the year.
Yeah, I think, we've seen the best version of this team when they've gotten some rest, and whenever they don't have that, they seem to just not have it. And it's weird to constantly be having this talk about, energy and giving more energy when for one, this is a team that goes fairly deep in its rotation. That did take a hit yesterday, obviously. Tucker Anderson only gets to play, 4 minutes. And Dexter Acano obviously went out, but I mean, he played 25 minutes before he ended up leaving the game. So you have a lot of guys. You have, Drake Allen and Dayton Albury, who basically split 20 minutes each for the most part in these games. They played a little bit more. Ian Martinez only plays 25, Mason only 30. It's not like these guys are playing like volume minutes, and you're also playing deep. And this is the style of play you've been used to doing. So it's like, why is there a lack of energy among the team when the whole point of having depth is so the guys can conserve energy? They're not going super hard in practice. Calhoun mentions that just about every single interview is they'll take a light day this day. They're only practicing for like an hour, if that, at least as far as physical practice. So not seeing the energy is just kind of weird. I don't get it.
Yeah, I know that there was sickness that went through the team, and sometimes there can be lingering effects.
That was a month ago.
But that was, we're several weeks removed from that. So Hard to know what else is going on.
And we saw a high energy version of these Aggies a week and a half ago.
Yeah, we did.
Against Nevada and Air Force, we saw what we should have seen out of the Aggies. Like they basically took Nevada outside behind the spectrum and spanked them. Like they just absolutely blitzed both of those teams. And I think also in the first half against New Mexico, they really showed at least some of that energy. I mean, they forced New Mexico into 15 turnovers. In the first half, they made Nelly Joseph basically a nobody and drew 2 fouls on him and sent him to the bench. In the first half, Donovan Dent went 1 for 5. He had 6 points, and most of that was because he got fouled. 4 of those were because he got fouled a couple of times late when New Mexico was in the bonus. So, like, Utah State was doing just about everything about as well as you could hope, minus the fact that they just weren't hitting 3-pointers. And then in the second half, they just stopped doing that. It's like Nelly Joseph came back in. They were like, who's this guy? He hadn't been on the court for like 20 minutes, but comes back onto the court and they suddenly decide, we can't guard this guy. A guy who was basically relegated to grabbing defensive rebounds in the first half, goes out and scores, 13 points in the second half, I think it was, grabbing a couple of offensive rebounds, ends the game with, 15 points, 13 rebounds. Like, he didn't miss a shot the whole game, so they didn't bother him around the rim. And then, of course, Donovan Dent, he goes for 8 points, more effective, not a ton more points because he has 8 points in the second versus 6 in the first. But again, 4 of his points in the first half were basically just freebies that the Aggies handed to him. He created more offense for himself in the second half and then dished out 4 assists as well and had a couple of hockey assists as well. Like, the Aggies just stopped playing the great defense. And again, it's why this is just a mystery, because we saw a version of the Aggies that could beat New Mexico by 8 or 9 points in the same game where they ended up losing by 19. And mind you, we saw that positive version of the Aggies for about 25 minutes of the game. And then over the last 15 minutes, they were just
utter collapse.
Yeah, they just suddenly decided they didn't know how to play basketball anymore. And maybe something that Calhoun mentioned after the game was like maybe just there was kind of a cumulative effect of just the demoralizing effect of seeing all those 3-pointers clanging off the rim, and something that allowed New Mexico to get into their offense a little bit more, because before the game, Calhoun was talking about how one of the best things as far as defending New Mexico is actually just make your shots, because that keeps them out of transition a little more. So I think that may have been a pretty big thing as well, is like missing the 3-pointers had a big butterfly effect on this game, where if the Aggies go 10 of 31, sure, that's only 15 of the 19 you lost by, but how many of the transition points of New Mexico goes away because of those 5 makes? Fewer rebounds, the potential momentum swings of hitting those extra 3-pointers, maybe having a bigger lead in the first half or not falling behind in the second half. There's a lot that could have swung on just a handful of 3-pointers if they go in instead of clanging off the rim. And again, it's yet another mystery to this game, because for 5 games, the Aggies were shooting like 45% from 3. 3 of their previous 5 games, they shot north of 50%. Another one in the 40s and another at 36%. And then they have one of the worst home shooting performances of all time for the Aggies.
Yeah. Yeah, really frustrating. And so, their confidence, it's shaken. How do you get it back? Sometimes it's just by steps.
Just move on.
Getting back to the basics, manufacturing points, but keep shooting. Guys, these are shooters, and the way shooters get back into it is by continuing to shoot. You got to see the ball go through the hoop. And 0 for 13 from your starters on Saturday from 3. Uncharacteristic. It was New Mexico doing some things different in the second half, maybe a little bit. Give Richard Pitino and his staff some credit, but the Aggies had looks.
Yeah,
they had clean, open looks.
Yeah,
the ball just wouldn't drop, And so then your confidence gets shaken. Then you're rushing things, you're pressing things. You still can't make free throws as a team, and it cascades.
Yeah, like I know some people are saying the Aggies fell in love with the three a little too much, but like if you're a 40% 3-point shooter, if you're Ian Martinez and you're shooting 40+%, if you're Mason Falslev who's still in the mid to high 30s, or you're Isaac Johnson, Dayton, like a lot of these guys who are shooting well above league average. If you're open from three and it's a catch and shoot, like there's a drive and there's a kick and you're open, the guy's not closing out anywhere near you, you take that 3-pointer because you are open and you are a good 3-point shooter. It's in their DNA to just shoot, or it's in their, it's what they've been trained to do.
It's how the offense is designed.
If they're second guessing their 3-point shooting, that's when you get in trouble, is because then it just gets in your head. These guys have the confidence to keep shooting even when they're not. You say, oh, you've missed 3 or 4 in a row, stop shooting. Okay, that's why you're watching it on TV and they're on the court, because they don't stop shooting. They know that they need to keep going because they're never going to make another shot if they don't take another shot. So basically, I haven't gone back and watched the full game, but just every one of those threes was pretty much a good one. You can go pick out 4 or 5 that were
there were a few
ideal.
Contests. Yeah, they were contested a little bit here and there.
And I know Cano, he had a couple that were ideal, like with how long. Of course, he made one of them that was really long. He had another one, right off of an inbound, still early in the shot clock. Just takes. There's a few that you could point out and say, well, maybe he could have done this or he could have done that. But you had good 3-point shooters taking good 3-point shots, and they just didn't fall. Welcome to the law of averages, everybody.
Yeah. But look, there's can be something to be said about adjustments where if it's a night where those threes aren't falling and clearly it looks like it's one of those nights, shouldn't the game plan adjust to attack the rim and try to get higher percentage shots than what you haven't been able to get so far?
Well, you saw that happen. Ian Martinez was pushing it to the rim a little bit more. You had Albury trying to get there. Drake Allen, like they took fewer 3-pointers in the second half. I think normally they've trended toward taking like 15 to 20 in the first half and then like 8 to 10 in the second half. We've seen that actually the last few games. And it was kind of trending that way, but then they started jacking up a few more threes when they were getting down by 10, 12, 15. So they ended up taking 13 3-pointers in the second half as opposed to 18 in the first half. So they did try to get inside, but also New Mexico could take advantage of that. Once the Aggies just stopped hitting 3-pointers, like New Mexico, one of their biggest strengths on defense is defending in the paint. One of their weaknesses actually is defending the perimeter. They rank in the 250s or something like that in 3-point defense. They rank like, if I remember, like it's top 30, top 20 or something like that. Really good, to put it bluntly. Really good at defending inside the arc. You got Nelly Jr. Joseph. They got other guys with length, and so they defend inside really well. So when the Aggies lose, basically all of their 3-point shooting, New Mexico knows that too, and suddenly you're going straight into the teeth of the monster, where that's their strength. The Aggies haven't been great at hitting layups this year. So what were the Aggies going to do if they couldn't get 3-pointers? Sure, they did adjust to try and get some stuff inside the arc, but it was their weakness against New Mexico's strength at that point, and New Mexico could focus even more because if you're not hitting threes, they're just going to pack the paint even more, and it just cascades, and it's what makes this loss look worse than it truly is. It's a game where the Aggies just played terrible, and everything ended up going the wrong way, and you lose by 19 at home.
2-4-4-4 before we hit a timeout here in the Full Court Press. Sam Merrill with lots of exclamation points. How cool is it to see a former Aggie with one of the better single-game 3-point shooting performances in NBA history? I love seeing the hard work that he's put in and player that he's become. Not many people thought that he would make it in the NBA when he was at USU. Yeah, we'll get into Sam Merrill's night a little bit later on in the show, but if you can't stick around for it, or if you missed it, Sam Money Merrill, off the bench, hit 9 3-pointers. He was 9 of 14 for the game. Overall, he was 9 of 13 from 3.
Scrub missed a 2-pointer.
Yeah, 27 points for Sam Merrill. the leading scorer for the Cleveland Cavaliers in a blowout win over the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah, it's just very impressive from him, and he's had a bit of a struggle. Like last year, he was firing and he was absolutely efficient, red hot. This year, started off with a bit of a struggle, but he's going to be playing a big role in likely playoff minutes for the team that has one of the best records in the NBA. I don't know if it's the best. They trade it back and forth between Oklahoma
but they're
City,
up there.
So they're one or two, depending on the day.
All right, got to take a time out here on the Full Court Press. Still plenty of time for you to weigh in on the Young Power Sports text line as it's a Monday morning. Mourning.
And I certainly had a Monday myself. I managed to lose something in plain sight.
So a lot more to discuss with Utah State's loss against New Mexico on Saturday. Looking at the stats, breaking it down, getting your reactions next here on the Full Court Press.
Copiers, printers, service, and supplies are just the beginning. Les Olson IT is the premier source for your business's structured cabling, IT, software, telephones, and security systems. We partner with you to find the ideal solution to all of your office technology needs. Tell us your goals and we'll get you there. Find out more at lesolson.com.
Les Olson IT.
Adams Wealth Advisors' entire team says, thank you, Cache Valley, for voting them the best financial planner in the Best of Northern Utah competition. Honesty and integrity is the hallmark of Adams Wealth Advisors. Let them earn your trust today.
This is Craig Adams. At Adams Wealth Advisors, we are here to help you receive peace of mind, whether you've done a lot of planning or a little planning. Count on our team at Adams Wealth Advisors for honesty, professionalism, and integrity.
Visit adamswealthadvisors.com or call 752-1702 to schedule a time with an advisor today. Please see adamswealthadvisors.com for more information on these recent awards.
Hi, Cache Valley. This is Dan Newmeyer at Blue Sky Restoration, formerly ARS. Do you know what to do if you are experiencing water flooding inside your home? First, make sure everyone is safe, turn off the water, and call Blue Sky. Do you know where the water shutoff is at in your home? If you don't, call Blue Sky and we'll send out a representative for free to help you find it and tag it so you can be prepared if an emergency arises. Remember Blue Sky, restoring your property and your life for a brighter tomorrow.
The Aggies, Jazz, high schools, even the Pee Wee's T-ball team. It's the Full Court Press on Sports Talk Radio, The Fan.
New and used snowmobile inventory is available at blowout prices at Young Power Sports in Logan. All remaining snowmobile inventory must go. Young Power Sports in Logan will beat or match any and all snowmobile prices. Price match guarantee that will not be beat. If you're interested, go check them out. 1903 South, 800 West. And they sponsor our text line, which has been active today as we recap what happened in the Spectrum. Utah State losing to New Mexico, 82-63. 6543 texting in. A good team was thumped by a better team. A little humble pie, never hurt anyone. Don't we have an offense we can run to get us high percentage 10 to 15 foot shots when the three ball isn't falling? Also, we need to change up the defense. The other teams are on to us.
Oh, well, so I think the point about the defense, like that is something that I think teams are catching on to. And you're seeing Calhoun trying to run adjustments. That's where the full court press kind of got thrown in because Nevada was 100% onto the Aggies early in that game with that defense. And the Aggies threw a wrench at them and they didn't dodge it. So then that kind of threw some teams off, and now teams are starting to catch up a bit. But this is also a really good New Mexico offense that the Aggies were shutting down for the entire first half. They just collapsed over those final 15 minutes.
Yeah, they only got 30 points in the first half, which would put them on pace well below their average.
Yeah, and again, the offense, like something that Calhoun talks about, is like one of the biggest things to help prevent some of New Mexico's great offense is having great offense of your own and keeping them out of transition. You know, with their fast pace, a lot of teams might turn turnovers into fast breaks. New Mexico, with the fast pace they play, they turn misses into fast breaks. The other point there, I will say would note that I would never put high percentage and 10 to 15 foot shots in the same sentence unless your name is Kevin Durant. Because nobody on this team has a high... Well, actually, Ian Martinez kind of does. So you basically have one player that I trust taking mid-range shots. And I know they have some plays where Ian will, a lot of times ends kind of ISO late shot clock is where he takes those. They have a couple baseline out of bounds plays that are medium-ish shots. Of course, most of those that I can think off the top of my head were missed, even by some of the better players. So you have to have the personnel to take those 10 to 15 foot shots. The Aggies mostly don't have that. Drake Allen's not taking them. Dayton Albury's not taking them. Mason doesn't have that in his bag. Well,
it's the worst percentage shot in the game.
So that's the thing is you can point out if you have someone who can take those shots, it's so hard to stop. Like when the Aggies have faced guys like that, it causes problems because their defense is open to that. Like when they play Obi Agbem, he's got that in his bag. He caused problems at Utah State. So I think that's kind of the problem with that. It's also like saying, hey, the Aggies should, go into the post more. It's like who's doing the post up?
Right. Who goes to work in the low post? Who has low post moves?
Yeah. So the guy with the best touch on turnaround jumpers in the post or even hook shots is probably Tucker Anderson and Isaac Johnson, and they average about 15 minutes played between the two of them. So I think right now the team's strength is hitting 3-pointers and finding ways to get to the rim. They're generally good at both those. They're struggling a bit more in the layups this year than they did last year. So maybe that's a limit of the offense, that they didn't have something else to go to. I think that would be a valid criticism, that they're a little too dependent on that. They don't have much more flavor aside from using their speed to get open 3-pointers and layups. But I mean, if you tell a team you're not going to hit layups and you're not going to hit 3-pointers, doesn't matter how good you are, mid-rangers and post-ups, you're probably not going to win anyway.
A couple more texts coming through. 0366. How many Division I schools are sitting at 3 losses for the season? All is not lost.
Yeah, I know. And that's why I've taken a more I'm not trying to go skies high. I'm trying to, not get too worked up over this, because it was a bad game. Like I can say the Aggies played terrible and also recognize they're 19-3. And it's also why I pointed out they got their butts handed to them last year multiple times by some pretty good teams they would eventually beat on different days. So it's not like the Aggies are completely defeated. It's not like New Mexico is now some insurmountable challenge. And who knows, they may lose to them again in Albuquerque. It's certainly possible. And hey, you can meet them in the Mountain West tournament. That's a possibility. So it's something to recognize that this game was bad. The Aggies play bad. There's some concerns about energy, about hustle, and being able to play the defense the way they need to play the defense and find ways to get offense if their main things aren't working. But a lot of the aspects of this game you can chalk up to being one-time things. You're only going to have probably one time shooting 16% from 3. You're probably only going to have one time where you lose 2 of your 2 main rotation guys during the game. A lot of that isn't going to happen again. So, and if it does, then I guess you're going to lose again. But they are low percentage events in a season, and you should be able to move on from them.
To answer your question, there are 9 teams out of
365.
Now, where did it go?
363 still. There's some that aren't counted.
364. 9 teams out of 364 who have 3 losses or less in college basketball.
Yeah, so the Aggies are fine.
They're still a very good company.
You can talk about how likely they are to get a super high seed or whether or not they'll have a good chance at winning the Mountain West regular season title, but pretty much all of your goals are still in place. Regular season title is still a possibility. Conference tournament still a possibility. NCAA tournament still a very high possibility. You can't freak out over the one game, just like you shouldn't have freaked out after they got blown out by Nevada at home last year, or when they got blown out at New Mexico, or when they got blown out at San Diego State. Just, again, all those were last year, to clarify. Except for obviously the loss in Mexico at home this year. But like you can't freak out just because of the one or even the two bad games. You got to take the season as a whole in context, and the season in whole is still pretty good.
5001, we've already kind of touched on this, but the offense is 3 or drive to the basket, but little to no mid-range shooting, and there has been mid-range shots available in most games that are passed up.
Yeah, I guess
the mid-range shot is the least efficient because even the three-pointer maybe has a lower field goal percentage. It is a higher efficient shot than a mid-range shot.
Yeah, it's more points per possession, points per shot, whatever, whichever those two you want to use. But again, the thing I would emphasize is that if you have a mid-range shooter, then it does become more efficient than a three. Because if you have a mid-range shooter who shoots 49%, that's better than I don't know if I might need to double check the math, but like someone who's shooting in the low 30s from three, then the math evens out. That's why I made that, nod to like Kevin Durant or insert any good mid-range shooter.
DeMar DeRozan is like he lives in the mid-range.
Yeah, like there's guys who can live in the mid-range. There's guys in this conference who can live in the mid-range. But it's also why like the stars tend to be the only ones who hit that, because one, it's a difficult shot, and it is also one of the most efficient. So you can't just take a shot in the mid-range because it's open, because the thing is, the defense is giving you that mid-range shot. And there's a reason the defense is giving you that mid-range shot, because you're only going to hit it 40-ish% of the time. And that's just a bad result for most possessions. I would, even on a night like this, like if you take me back and say, all right, the Aggies are 5 of 31. You ask me, would you rather Tucker Anderson take a mid-range shot or a three-pointer? I'd say three-pointer every time.
Right. Yeah. If you've got you're totally right. If you've got somebody who can efficiently hit a mid-range shot, then yes, you take advantage of that to punish teams who leave those gaps and allow you to exploit it. But if you don't, then it will remain a soft spot in the defense. And so how do you counter it? You use it to either attack the rim from that open space, or you try to draw defenders to you so you can swing it to another spot on the floor where you have a higher efficient opportunity.
Yeah, it's why you got to be able to hit those 3-pointers. It's why when teams miss their 3-pointers, they tend to lose, because who knows, when you miss the shots you take, what do you know? You lose. And again, let's talk about taking mid-rangers. Like when the 3-pointers are open, you take them. You don't step into the mid-range just because you've been missing all of the threes, because again, that's just an objectively bad decision based on the numbers. So the Aggies didn't take bad shots. They just missed the shots they took.
Right.
Shots that they have been making. This is not like a bad 3-point shooting team. Shot 16%. This is a team that's shot better than basically anyone in the country over the last 2.5 weeks. And then they suddenly look like the worst team out there. And then at that point, their only other thing is trying to drive to the basket. But the thing is, they should also be able to do that because they're faster. They should theoretically be able to create some things out of the pick and roll, but they couldn't do that. A lot of that had to do with New Mexico, because there have been other games where the Aggies, were able to get some points inside and make things work. But with New Mexico, it's their strength to defend inside the arc. And so the Aggies were just stuck between a rock and a hard place, unable to hit shots that are a big part of their offense and that they're good at, and then trying to break through one of the strengths of New Mexico.
Number of texts coming through on the Young Power Sports text line from 9315. So hold on to your hat while we try to get through some of these. I do believe that the game on Saturday had a couple important factors. One, New Mexico is a group of players that have been together for a longer time than our team, as in lots of players that have stayed at New Mexico longer than 2 years. Also, USU had our worst offensive game in a long time. I also think that fouls affect the game. I think the one ref had to be held back by the other refs from that point on would have had a bias in the way he would call the game. And it wouldn't be for Utah State just because of all the feelings that went on with that. New Mexico had a whole week to perfect going against the matchup zone to keep players out because of caution with injuries in the game. Last but not least, I really do feel we can beat them in the high altitude of Albuquerque. The sky is not falling, and coach will get it fixed. P.S. Lots of our first-year issues will be fixed by the incoming recruits and retention that Calhoun has for next year. There's no guarantee in that, by the way, as an aside.
Yeah.
And then also, what big-name brand teams this season have had the highest volume highest volume free throw percentage shooters have collapsed like USU this last game with a high thought of team resume with their high shooting? It would be hard to believe USU are the only high-level team to have this happen this year.
Well, I mean, Tennessee was like the number one team in the country, got held to like 47 points in a game. Like, you can be a good team and have an utter collapse.
Yeah. Okay, so a couple of points there. There is absolutely no guarantee that the roster you have this year will be retained for next year. That is just the factor of college athletics. This is not a negative against Coach Calhoun or anything. It's just, if you have a roster that is mostly intact for more than 2 years, congratulations.
Yeah, like New Mexico, most of the guys I can think of haven't been around longer than 2 years. Like Donovan Dent's the only one I can think of.
Well,
Trey Washington, maybe?
Was Junior Joseph there the year before that? He was a transfer.
He transferred in last year. So did Amzil.
Yeah, so
CJ Nolan transferred in this year.
They had guys there last year who are still there.
They kept a lot of guys from last year. Of course, they still lost JT Toppin and had a graduation, plus they lost Jamal Mashburn. So I think they have more guys than the Aggies that returned from last year, though they did lose some key guys.
Yeah, continuity is nice, but we've seen with Coach Calhoun this season and with Danny Sprinkle last season that continuity is nice, but talent plus a good system can still win you games.
And at this point, continuity probably shouldn't be an issue.
Right. That's been proven that continuity is nice, but it's not the end-all, be-all.
Yeah, and as far as things being fixed by the incoming recruits, I am high on a lot of the recruits. I've been watching a lot of film on them recently. Got back to it a little bit today. But don't assume that recruits, especially freshman recruits, are going to come in and fix things. More likely they be if there are any incoming transfers that the Aggies end up with. But you're also going to lose Ian Martinez, Aubin, probably some other guys, because you just have to assume somebody's going to transfer. Yeah. I'm not going to play the guessing game as to who.
It's just the reality of college sports right now.
That's just how it be. As far as the referees, I don't think people were really pinning this on the referees because a 19-point loss is never going to be pinned on the referees. The one referee was extremely unprofessional in that one moment.
How does that guy even still referee?
Yeah, that's you cannot have that happen with an official.
So for those who may have missed it, describe, because you had a better view than most of us.
Yeah, so essentially, and there's some video I've seen. Basically, there was a play. It was just during the game, and then there's a whistle. I think Utah State got called for a foul or something. But like Coach Calhoun was mad about something that happened on the other end back where the Aggies were on offense. And Calhoun actually afterwards said it was something about a kicked ball. He thought maybe the Lobos committed a kick ball violation because I think Ian Martinez tried to split a double team, ended up losing the ball, and it was a turnover. And so he was kind of getting a little mad. Was on the official, but then Calhoun just kind of starts to disengage a little bit. There were some slightly heated words between the official and Calhoun. Nothing. They're just kind of yelling and being a coach and an official.
Which happens in every game.
Nothing out of the ordinary in the initial exchange there. Calhoun's mad. The official is defending their call and giving back some of that energy, which is within what an official can do. But then Calhoun kind of starts to walk away, disengage. He's still kind of tossing some verbal barbs or whatever he was saying as he's walking away. And I guess the official kind of took a little umbrage to that. He goes up and he chases after Calhoun, which is the first big no-no.
Yeah. Pointing his finger at him.
Yeah. Like as an official.
It's in his face.
Yeah. When you're an official, you let the coach have the last word. You cannot have the attitude of, I have to say the last thing, because you cannot have the attitude. And that's why you got to have thick skin. You have to ignore all the mean things that get said to you, because Calhoun was not saying nice things to the official. He was not complimenting him on his performance in that game so far.
Or asking where he wanted to go for dinner after the game.
And there were probably a few 4-letter words that may have escaped his mouth. So it's not like Calhoun was spewing off roses and kittens when he was talking to the official, but there is, especially with Calhoun disengaging. Like, that's the biggest thing. Like, if a coach is still getting in the referee's face and the referee kind of gets back, it's like, whatever, they're just being a couple of dudes, and eventually you separate them. But yeah, the referee was completely unprofessional. And
so it looked like he may have made contact with Coach Calhoun.
Yeah, I think he would have initiated, like, almost doing the little, chest bump, like, getting up in his face, or trying to. He's a little shorter than Calhoun. But yeah, he basically initiated contact with him in a way that would be an automatic tech for a lot of coaches and players.
Had it been the other way around.
Yeah, and maybe even an ejection. So it was unprofessional. It was late in the game. The game was kind of already getting decided at that point. The Lobos were already pulling away. So it was a troubling thing to see, but ultimately I wouldn't really chalk it up to anything that impacted the game. It was just the referee being an idiot.
Yeah, and to 9315's point, how would this not affect his bias from there on out? But yeah, you're right. The game was, it really wasn't at a point where could Utah State have made a run? Okay, maybe, but there was a pretty wide gap already at that point.
Yeah, and one thing I would say with referees, trying to draw on my limited but increasingly distant memories of being a referee, because I haven't done it in like 10 years. But as a referee and having talked to the referees at a low level, I'm not trying to equate what I did to college. I can't do that. But the mindset is you take pride in being unbiased and in removing yourself from that. Even if coaches are yelling at you and you desperately want to call that ticky-tack foul on them, like, just to show them up. But you take pride in that unbiased. Like, yeah, the coach just lit me up with a bunch of 4-letter words, and that dad up there is being incredibly annoying, but I'm still going to call a foul on the other team because it was a foul on the other. I'm not going to deliberately not call something. And I would hope that college referees carry that same mindset. And mind you, even when you have that mindset, it's not that there can still be some unconscious level where it's like you can't control that because we're humans, and there are unconscious biases that we can't get over. But if the referees take pride in their craft, one of the things they'll take the most pride in is if you get into a verbal shouting match and eject a coach, you can still be objective because you kind of just try and just take that out and just watch the two teams as if they're both wearing red and blue practice jerseys and there's no crowd. Like, you try and referee the game that way. And if that referee is like that, hopefully he'd have been able to get beyond that. But there's also 3 referees on the court. One ref isn't going to change the game.
In 5452, kind of on the same topic, I can say that was the absolute worst half of basketball I've ever watched in the Spectrum in all the years of being a season ticket holder. Brutal. And have you heard of any action being taken against Tommy Nunez? That was ridiculous on his part. You rarely hear about discipline to officials. We heard this last week. What was it, in the A10?
Yeah.
But you very rarely hear a public reprimand or what discipline took place with an official. Doesn't mean that discipline doesn't happen. It's just they very rarely publicize it.
Yeah.
So I've not seen anything. I think he deserves some, whether it's a reprimand or...
It's mostly a reprimand because, like,
you can't ref another game in the Spectrum for a while. I don't know, but he deserves something because that was uncalled for.
Yeah, there's a reprimand, or I don't know what kind of... You might say like a mild suspension, because, like, it's bad, but it's not like horrible. Like, he didn't like impact a game. He didn't eject somebody because he got like, he's like, I'm almost surprised. Like, we talk about how he's like being unprofessional, like getting up in Calhoun's face. He didn't give him a tech.
No.
He just got up in his face and just kind of gave back what maybe some of Calhoun was dishing out.
Yeah.
So
if you're taking issue with how a coach is coming after you, call the whistle, give him a technical, and walk away.
Yeah.
You don't go chase him down and get all in his face.
Yeah.
That was just totally uncalled for.
So he showed some restraint in not handing Coach Calhoun a tech to that degree. And that's why I think it's some kind of reprimand, like sit down with him and be like, hey, you were an a-hole. Don't do that again.
Well, that crew was a little bit off because the whole thing about did Nelly Jr. Joseph have 5 fouls or not? Assigning fouls to the wrong guy.
That wasn't the referee's fault.
That got a little weird.
That's not the referee's fault. You can't put that on them. They're not the ones counting the fouls.
No, but it's a scoreboard. It's a ref that's not on the floor that was making the mistake.
It's a scorekeeper. But the thing is, the referees did a good job of handling that situation because, like, normally you don't listen to the crowd, but like they figured out what the crowd was mad about, which can be like, honestly, think about how you would figure that out if you're a referee whose job is to ignore the crowd. They figured it out, went and checked, double checked, when they were there, figured it out, and they came back and they realized, oh wait, the scoreboard still says it, so let's go over to the announcer and say, okay, you got to announce that he only has 4 fouls. We know they're not going to be happy, but that was correct.
The correct call.
He only had 4 fouls. So the referees handled that about as well as you can.
All right, we're overdue for a timeout, but still more time for you to text in 435-339-0321.
It's cold outside, but you can keep warm inside with a quality-built, super-efficient York furnace. Count on a furnace from York because it's backed by the strongest warranties available. It's just another way we install confidence. Call Advanced Heating and Air Conditioning, your local York dealer, at 752-7272. Online at advancedheating-ac.com. York, install confidence.
We're not comfortable until you are. Advanced Heating and Air.
The perfect night, the perfect date, the perfect Valentine's dinner for 2 at Cafe Sabor. You choose the night, Monday, February 10th through Saturday, February 15th. Then comes the amazing Valentine's dinner. 4 options priced $25, $30, $35, and $45. You can also include a movie for 2. No excuses. 5 days to make your Valentine happy, 10th through the 15th, with 4 amazing specials to choose from, including a movie at Cache Valley's favorite Mexican restaurant, Cafe Sabor. Go to cafesabor.com for details. cafesabor.com for details on the Sweetheart Special.
Hi, this is Robbie with LSS Insurance. If you're about to turn 65, the Medicare phone calls, mailers, and emails can be unreal. Out-of-market telemarketers simply do not understand Utah, Idaho, or your individual situation. We have real answers and real solutions with local help. At LSS Insurance, we are your health insurance specialists. Call us 752-9493. Having local help makes all the difference, and there's no cost to you. Call 752-9493 or visit lssins.com.
They never could play it, but they sure can talk about it. Eric Frandsen and Jason Walker on the Full Court Press.
Welcome back to the Full Court Press. Eric Frandsen, Jason Walker. The Utah State-New Mexico game wasn't the only game on Saturday. It was a very busy schedule throughout the Mountain West Conference. And Boise State rolled through Fresno, demolishing the Bulldogs 82-60. San Jose State took care of Air Force 75-64. But after that, it got interesting. We know the Aggie game, how that turned out. But before that, it was another barn burner with San Diego State and a team much lower than them in the standings.
Is it a barn burner if they only score like 60 points?
Well, as far as intensity is concerned, San Diego State beating Wyoming, Utah State's next opponent, 63-61. And that game was, it's anybody's game down to the wire.
Well, and it was almost beat for beat what happened in the San Diego State-San Jose State game. Because San Diego State finished that one on like a 19-0 run or something like that. A big run.
Big run, yeah.
Or like maybe San Jose had like 2 points in the final, some high amount of minutes. San Diego State goes on a 20-0 run against Wyoming. Like the Cowboys led for a pretty solid chunk of that game.
And a 9-point lead with 6.5 to go.
Yeah, which is just eerily similar to San Jose, where they had a 9 or 10-point lead with 6-ish minutes to go. And San Diego State, I don't know what they're doing. Like, are they just playing around at this point? Like, are they doing like the old LeBron, like, we're just going to flip the switch when we feel like it? Doesn't matter how you play, it's how you finish, which San Diego State's proving that point right. How many times they probably should have lost to Air Force, to San Jose State, now to Wyoming. I think there was probably somebody else maybe in there. Like, they have just been playing with their food so much. But again, I think a lot of it just has to do with the fact that they are a slow it down, high defense, but struggling offense. It's like the football team that only wins games like 6-3 or 12-9, basically. That's what San Diego State is. They're a team that will shut down basically any offense they go against, but by golly, they better score some points or they're in deep trouble. Like, they might never score 70 again this year.
Yeah.
But the other team will be lucky to go across 60. And that's kind of San Diego State's formula. And I guess it works because they're winning despite the embarrassingly close margins against these lower teams. They're still wins.
Hashtag for the good of the conference.
For the good of the conference. Eric was really rooting for that. He was watching the San Diego State going. He was like, yes, for the good of the conference.
And
especially for the good of the Pac-12.
Well, yes, that's true. And in somewhat of a sick way, you can say that New Mexico's win at Utah State was for the good of the conference. Because that will boost New Mexico's resume to make sure there's 3 teams that go. Then the other game Saturday night, after the Aggie one, I flipped over to watch this one. Nevada and UNLV. And Nevada wins that one 71-65. Davidson scored late. They had some good defensive presence. UNLV has been on a bit of a slide here. After surprising teams early in the conference schedule, now suddenly they're struggling to find wins.
Yeah, they ever since beating Utah State, San Diego State, they're on a 4-game losing streak to Wyoming, New Mexico, Utah State, and Nevada. So, yeah, they went from being kind of on top of the world to suddenly 6 losses in their last 8 games.
Yeah, so just looking at the current standings in the Mountain West, New Mexico squarely on top, unquestionably number 1 right now in the standings. Utah State right behind them, although Colorado State is just a half a game behind the Aggies. Both of those teams only have 2 losses in conference play. San Diego State at 8-3, Boise at 7-4, UNLV 5-6. Then Nevada and Wyoming right behind that at 4 and San Jose.
They're all 4 and 7.
All at 4 and 7. And Utah State is traveling to Wyoming tomorrow night.
You forgot Fresno and Air Force combined 1-21 in conference play.
You're right. I did forget Fresno and Air Force.
Most people forget them at this point.
Easily forgettable.
But the Aggies got to play them on Friday.
All right, another quick timeout. You're in the Full Court Press. And talking about rankings and standings, we'll give you the latest RPI rankings for our local high schools teams in their final week of the regular season. Discuss that next here on the Full Court Press.
Many Aggie fans like to go to the game. Some fans love to yell at the TV, and all fans like to wear a shirt or a jacket with their favorite team's logo. Aggie fans find the best selection of USU logoed apparel at Locker 42. Find yourself an Aggie t-shirt for $10. Locker 42 features Aggie logoed hoodies, jackets, and golf shirts, and a hat wall with over 40 styles. Women's specific apparel, youth sizes for the junior Aggie, and toddler and infant Aggie items as well. Locker 42 is a store for Utah State fans by Utah State fans, and proud to be part of Aggie Nation.
This is Catherine Buse with Cache Valley Bank, and we understand that concerns about fraud can weigh heavily on you. Your peace of mind is important to us. That's why we're committed to looking out for you and your family. Our team keeps a vigilant eye on your account. If you ever have concerns or need support, we're just a call or visit away. Whether you need advice or just someone to talk to, our friendly staff is ready to help. We're more than just a bank. We're your neighbors, and we care about your security. Visit your local branch today. Cache Valley Bank, member FDIC.
The Full Court Press on Sports Talk Radio, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM. The Fan.
Winter, cold temperatures, they can cause problems with diesel. I know it's been feeling pretty warm today, but make sure it's running right. Make sure your battery is starting right. All the best diesel fuel additives are in stock right now at your locally owned Napa Auto Parts. And go check them out in many different locations between Preston and Providence. So this is the last week of the regular season for high school basketball. And games for the boys basketball, those are on Wednesday and Friday. I think we do have girls games are on Tuesday and Thursday. And I think we have one girls game on Saturday. But the latest RPI, looking at where things stand right now, that final week for the boys, Green Canyon stays at number 1. Ridgeline not too far at number 3. Now, Green Canyon made a statement last week in their win over Ridgeline. Then at 14 is Skyview, Westfield at 16, Bear River at 17, Logan at 20, Mountain Crest at 21. And we look at the upcoming playoffs, Green Canyon and Ridgeline, they'll get a first-round bye. But teams hosting in the first round right now, Skyview and Westfield, if the playoffs started today, they would be hosting games. Bear River, Logan, and Mountain Crest would be on the road.
And Bear River just outside of that, although with Ridgeline, they're playing Ridgeline this week, may be tough for them to cross over because they just have to get a win. Doesn't matter how good their opponent is. They got to win if they want to cross that threshold. So they may not be able to pull that off. But, I think we'll see some good playoff runs from a few of these teams. And I hope that Ridgeline stays out of that 4 spot because I don't want to have to see Green Canyon and Ridgeline in the semifinals.
Right. Get them on opposite sides of the bracket.
Yeah, get them on opposite sides of the bracket, so if they meet each other again, it's for the title.
And for girls basketball, not too much different with, again, a Region 11 team on top.
Yeah, it's Ridgeline. They're 22-0. Snow Canyon, though, at 21-0, so they're pretty much right up there with Ridgeline. Should be a fun matchup if those two teams meet in the playoffs. Mountain Crest, Skyview, just inside the first round bye. Mountain Crest at 7, Skyview at 8. Green Canyon at 15 should be able to host a playoff game if they stay above that 16 line. And Westfield Bear River at 20 and 24, respectively.
Yeah, so last week of the regular season for these high school teams, and a number of these games will have carried on local radio and video streaming on CashValleyDaily.com this week. And then this weekend, they will probably... with games on Saturday, I don't know when they'll reveal the final RPI and the playoff brackets, but it'll be sometime this weekend, I'm sure. Stick around, a lot more to get into. Big trades in the NBA, how it affects the Utah Jazz next.
I'm Dan Patrick, and this is Above the Noise. What once seemed like a perfect marriage between Jimmy Butler and Miami is now unraveling right before our eyes. Butler, the embodiment of Heat culture, with his fiery competitiveness and relentless drive, is now at odds with the very organization that celebrates those qualities. Reports of Butler's demand to be traded and the Heat suspending him for conduct detrimental to the team have cast a shadow over a franchise known for stability and success. At the heart of the tension, Jimmy Butler's relationship with team president Pat Riley. Once lauded as a mutual respect between these two competitors, that bond appears to be frayed. Riley's commitment to team-first values has clashed with Butler's increasing frustrations over not getting a new contract and a failure for the team to make roster moves. As this saga unfolds, it raises the question, can the Heat salvage the relationship, or is a split inevitable? It's Miami, and with the trade deadline approaching, the Heat is on. I'm Dan Patrick, and this is Above the Noise. This is